There is a feeling many women know, the knot in the stomach that never seems to go away, the quiet unease that appears without warning. On the surface, everything seems fine. But inside, something feels broken. There is no evidence, no suspicious messages or calls, just silence. A void. A gut instinct that, no matter how hard you try to ignore it, whispers, and sometimes screams, when you are alone. Infidelity rarely begins with a kiss. It starts much earlier. It begins the moment he stops seeing you the way he once did. When his good morning becomes automatic. When the laughter you shared no longer feels spontaneous but rehearsed, like lines read from a script. It is in these subtle changes that the soul senses a disconnect. Often, a woman doesn't need to uncover hidden messages to know something is wrong. Because before physical betrayal comes emotional abandonment, and that abandonment can be felt. It is being with someone who is no longer present. It is looking into the eyes of someone you love, only to realize that your reflection no longer exists there. Like a flower still being watered, yet refusing to bloom. Carl Jung said that people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. And that is how many men begin to betray. When they can no longer bear their own inner dissatisfaction, they seek in someone else what they cannot build within themselves. It is not love they are searching for, it is anesthesia for their emptiness. And you, as a woman, sense it. You notice that he no longer asks about your day. His answers are short, hollow. He no longer checks if you got home safely, yet still expects your care. This emotional asymmetry, the first crack, the first warning sign, reveals that you are giving more than you are receiving. And when you confront him even with just a look or a gentle question, his attitude shifts. He becomes defensive. He tells you that you're exaggerating, that you're being paranoid. And that is where the subtlest form of manipulation begins, when your intuition is treated as the problem, instead of being heard as a warning. You are not crazy. You are waking up. Have you noticed that something in your relationship no longer resonates the way it once did? And it hurts. Of course it hurts, because you are still betting on love, while he is no longer even betting on the truth. Emotional infidelity is a silent betrayal. It is being physically present, but emotionally checked out. It is abandonment that leaves no visible marks, yet slowly empties you from the inside day by day. Often, they hide it masterfully. They blame work stress. I have so much on my mind. Fatigue. But it is not physical exhaustion, it is emotional distance. Disconnection disguised as routine. The mind and the heart elsewhere, while the body remains. It is like living with a ghost that still has a name. And you feel it. Female intuition does not require tangible proof when the soul already senses the absence of love. There is something in the energy, in the silences, in the gestures that no longer arrive. Tenderness has vanished. Intimacy is gone. All that remains is a forced companionship, growing colder with each passing day, like a room that once felt like home, but now is just a place to sleep. And there you are, doubting yourself, doubting what you feel, searching for reasons to justify the unjustifiable, wondering if you are the one failing. You are not. What's failing is not your perception. What's failing is the connection that once was alive and is now broken. And no one has the right to invalidate what you feel so deeply. This is the loneliest stage of a relationship, when there is no visible betrayal yet, but emotional absence is already there. When you are still fighting for something he gave up on long ago. When you cling to memories because the present no longer holds you. You are not alone. You are not wrong for feeling what you feel. You are becoming aware. You are beginning to see, and though seeing hurts, the truth is always more liberating than living a lie. Because the truth, no matter how painful, is still kinder than self-deception. A woman who listens to her intuition begins to walk toward her truth. And truth, however uncomfortable, is always the first step toward freedom. Because no one deserves to be loved halfway. No one deserves to beg for attention, for presence, for affection or respect. Trust what you feel. Because if something no longer resonates with love, it probably is no longer love. Infidelity doesn't begin with bodies. It begins with silence. It begins when he shuts down emotionally and lives on autopilot. When he stays beside you, but is no longer truly there when instead of conversing, he merely replies. When instead of listening, he only nods. When instead of truly seeing you, he looks without really looking. And you feel that emotional blackout, as if the lights had suddenly gone out in the house where love once lived. Many believe infidelity is born from a sudden opportunity or a fleeting moment of weakness. But the truth is, it is rarely sudden. It is a process, a slow internal decay that begins with a quiet disconnection, with the silent choice to stop choosing you day after day. It is a gradual abandonment, almost imperceptible, that makes no sound, but leaves deep scars. Carl Jung spoke of the shadow, the parts of ourselves we deny, repress, or refuse to face. And when a man does not take responsibility for his shadow, for his emptiness, his boredom, his frustration, he does not confront it within himself. Instead, he projects it outward. He begins searching for what he thinks is missing, not realizing that what he longs for is not another woman. It is himself. Because a person who has never met himself will always get lost in others. Infidelity begins long before the body betrays. It begins when he no longer has the courage to admit that something is broken. When he chooses to keep playing a role rather than face the truth. When he stays out of inertia, while his soul is already searching for an escape. And the problem isn't only that he pulls away, but that he tries to keep up appearances. He acts as if everything is fine, yet there is no feeling in his gestures. It's as though he is living on autopilot, with a faded smile and an absent gaze. He speaks less, or speaks the same words, but without a soul behind them. He no longer looks at you the same way. He no longer shares his thoughts or his dreams. His "I love yous" sound like recycled phrases. There is no more novelty, no curiosity, no genuine presence. He answers you while staring at his phone. He listens with part of his ear, but his mind is elsewhere. And of course you notice it. You feel like an echo. You are still there, but you no longer resonate in him. You notice when he stops laughing with you. When the humor you once shared fades. When spontaneity becomes routine. When you realize you are lonelier with him than you ever were alone. That is the most painful kind of betrayal, the one no one else can see, but you feel every single day. It is the absence of a soul, while the body remains. It is the "I'm here" that carries no meaning. And eventually, even physical closeness begins to change. The caresses fade. Or there is sex, but without a soul. And that too is a sign, because intimacy is never just about bodies. It is the purest expression of emotional connection. When that bond is broken, the body begins to reflect it too. He either avoids you physically, or approaches with a strange intensity that doesn't fit, as if trying to cover up the absence of love with flashes of passion. As if desire could be an excuse not to face what is already broken inside. And while all of this is happening, you're still there, waiting for the man you love to return. Hoping for the version of him that was once more present, more engaged, more human. But that version is gone, because he has already begun a journey outward without telling you. And that, too, is a form of betrayal. Leaving without warning, abandoning without goodbye, disappearing without ever moving away. That journey often begins with small things. A conversation with someone who flatters him. Harmless exchanges on social media. Messages that appear meaningless to you. yet mean something to him, because they mark the beginning of an inner disconnection that soon begins to show on the outside. Because when he starts hiding things, he is already stepping out of the relationship. Even if his body still sleeps beside you, every secret becomes a closed door between you. It is hard to accept, but necessary. For many women lose years of their lives trying to revive a relationship that has already died in their partner's soul. They persist. They try. They justify. They blame themselves. But they don't see that he already made the decision to leave. He simply lacks the courage to say it. Because saying it would mean taking responsibility. And many would rather make you feel guilty than face their own emotional cowardice. This is where self-deception becomes your greatest enemy. Because you don't want to see it, it hurts too much to face quiet abandonment head-on. You still hope he will change, that he will come back. But here is the truth. When a man begins to betray, it doesn't start with his body. It begins in his mind, in his energy, in the quiet places of his soul. The body is only the last part to leave. Betrayal is born in the soul, and ends in the bed. And this is the most important thing you must understand. You are not the cause of his infidelity. It doesn't matter if you weren't perfect. It doesn't matter if you made mistakes. No one has the right to betray your trust simply because they don't know how to manage their own frustration. An emotionally mature man speaks. He takes responsibility. He faces you with the truth. He does not cowardly run into someone else's arms while you are still giving your whole heart to him. Infidelity begins in the soul, because that is where the decision not to remain emotionally faithful is first made. And being faithful is not only about not sleeping with someone else. True fidelity means caring for the bond. It means being present, choosing you, communicating, honoring the emotional commitment. And when he stops doing that, the betrayal has already begun, even if there is no other woman yet, even if he still sleeps beside you. Because fidelity is revealed in intent, not in the absence of physical evidence. So if you feel something has broken, it probably has. And if you feel alone in the relationship, it may be because he has already checked out emotionally, and the sooner you acknowledge that, the sooner you can decide whether you want to keep waiting for crumbs, or pick up your dignity and choose your peace. Because you were not born to beg for love. You were born to live it fully. It's not magic. It's not paranoia. It's perception. The body feels it long before the mind can explain it. And when a man begins to be unfaithful, emotionally or physically, he leaves signs. Not because he wants to be caught, but because his energy can no longer sustain the lie. And there are patterns, behaviors that repeat in almost every case, even if the details differ. If you observe them clearly, without romanticizing, without justifying, you will see it was all there in front of you. Your intuition whispers what your eyes are not yet ready to see. Emotional absence disguised as routine, as stress, as fatigue. It always begins the same way, when he becomes absent without leaving. He no longer listens. No longer seeks you out. No longer shows interest. His replies grow cold, evasive. I've been really tired. I have a lot on my plate. I'm not in the mood. There is always an excuse. But the truth is, his energy is no longer with you. He begins to withdraw. He no longer shares how he feels. No longer tells you about his day. No longer asks about yours. He starts treating you like a housemate instead of a partner. And when you try to get close, you hit an invisible wall. He becomes an emotional ghost hiding behind routine. The house looks the same. The meals are served. But the soul of the relationship has already vanished. And then come the digital secrets. The defensiveness. The locked screens and hidden messages. Where he once left his phone out in the open, now he guards it like a nuclear device. He changes his password. Keeps it face down. carries it with him to the bathroom. And if you ask an innocent question, "Who messaged you?" his reaction is exaggerated. "Why do you care? Are you checking on me? You're so jealous." And in that overreaction lies the confession. Because when there is nothing to hide, there is no reason to get angry. But when a parallel conversation has begun, when a double emotional life is unfolding, the performance starts. He makes you feel invasive for simply following your intuition. He may even accuse you of being insecure, when in reality, he is the one breaking the trust. And that is emotional abuse. When someone twists your feelings just to avoid owning their actions. Then come the changes in sexual intimacy. And a bed never lies. It may grow cold or, on the contrary, suddenly intense. Both extremes are signs. Some men, out of guilt, try to compensate with sudden, almost theatrical passion, as if they could silence their internal betrayal with sex. Others simply disconnect. They no longer touch you, no longer desire you, no longer feel you. Even the way he touches changes, mechanical, detached. Without tenderness, without emotional presence. Sex becomes a hollow transaction. A way to maintain appearances. Or worse, an act that makes you feel lonelier than ever. Because there is nothing more devastating than being touched without being truly felt. And then, almost inevitably, come the unnecessary arguments. The meaningless conflicts. He starts picking fights over anything. A word. A gesture. A small forgetfulness. Suddenly, everything becomes a reason to argue, because he needs an excuse to pull away, because he needs a justification for his distance. If he paints you as the villain, he can convince himself that he has the right to look for something better. This is called projection. He accuses you of what he is doing. He blames you for what he cannot admit. He turns you into the toxic one, the dramatic one, the one who just doesn't get it. And while you exhaust yourself trying to keep the peace, he builds a narrative where you are the problem, and he is the victim. Sometimes he even provokes you on purpose, just to create conflict. Because constant conflict gives him an internal excuse to justify his emotional disconnection. Instead of confronting his betrayal, he prefers to portray you as unbearable, and then he begins removing you from his future, where you once talked about traveling together. Now, he makes plans alone. Where it used to be us, now it's only me. He no longer says your name when he speaks of tomorrow. He no longer includes you in decisions. He no longer sees you in his long-term vision. And you feel it. You see how you slowly fade from his dreams. The shared goals vanish. The common path dissolves. Until there are no more conversations about the future at all. And if you bring it up, he changes the subject, gets annoyed, or avoids it. Because, in his mind, even if he hasn't said it out loud, you are no longer part of his story. So he shifts the blame. He manipulates you emotionally. And this is the cruelest part. He makes you feel wrong for being suspicious, as if you're imagining things, as if your insecurities are the real problem. He begins to distort your perception. He disarms you with phrases like, "Why do you always think the worst? Can you trust me just a little? You're the one ruining this." Slowly, you start to wonder if you are the problem. Your intuition begins to lose its voice. You question yourself. You doubt. You stay silent. You wear yourself out. And in that silence, he gains ground. Because while you doubt yourself, he continues deeper into his betrayal. The saddest part is that many women adapt to this emotional abuse, hoping it's temporary, hoping he will return to the man he used to be. But that version of him is gone. Your intuition is your soul's radar. And if something feels different, it probably is. You don't need a photo, a message, or a witness. Because the deepest betrayal isn't seen with the eyes, it's felt in the soul. It's felt in a body that no longer vibrates the same. in a sadness that arrives without reason, in laughter that no longer flows naturally, in the empty gaze of a man who once felt like home and now feels like a stranger. So if any of these signs are present, don't ignore them. Don't normalize what hurts. Don't justify what dims your light. True fidelity is something you feel. And when it's gone, you feel that too, because at the end of the day, as Carl Jung said, what you resist persists. And resisting the truth you already know only prolongs the pain. There comes a moment in many relationships when you no longer know if you're seeing reality or imagining it. When something deep inside of you is screaming, but everything outside convinces you that you're overreacting, that you're crazy, that you're the one destroying what you're trying so hard to hold together. That moment is the epicenter of emotional manipulation. It's when he has already started to leave, but refuses to admit it. When he is already disconnected, but doesn't want to be seen as the villain. So what does he do? He changes the mirror. He distorts your reflection. He plants doubts in your heart, so you can't see what, deep down, you already know. And he does it with subtle but devastating phrases. You're imagining things. You always think the worst of me. You're impossible to talk to. You're overreacting. You're trying to control me. Little by little, what was once intuition turns into anxiety. What was once clarity becomes confusion. You start apologizing for your own feelings. You stay quiet just to avoid another conflict. You begin to hide your emotions as if they were mistakes. This has a name: gaslighting. A form of emotional abuse that makes you doubt your own reality. That convinces you you're irrational when in truth you were simply being intuitive. It's a psychological distortion that undermines your self-confidence and silences your inner voice. And the most common way it operates is through avoidance. He avoids the conversation. He withdraws. He disconnects. And when you confront him, he responds with indifference, sarcasm, or anger. Never with truth. Never with vulnerability. For example, you say, "I feel like you're distant." He replies, "There you go again with your drama." You say, "It bothers me how you act around that woman." He answers, "So now I'm not even allowed to talk to anyone." You say, "I feel lonely." He responds, "You're always complaining." In this way, every time you express your feelings, he turns it into an attack. Every time you try to get closer, he meets you with coldness or mockery, until you learn to stay silent. Until you grow accustomed to indifference, as if it were normal. Until you start believing that yes, maybe you are too much. But you're not. You're feeling. And that is valid. No one should make you feel guilty for having emotions, for asking questions, for seeking clarity. Carl Jung said that no one becomes enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. And that is exactly what this manipulation tries to prevent, that you become aware of the darkness he is creating, that you confront him with truth. That is why he needs you to doubt yourself. That is why he needs you to believe that you are the problem. Another common tactic is silent comparison. Suddenly he starts talking about other women, saying someone else understands him better, listens without judgment, appreciates him more. And he doesn't do it to open an honest conversation. He does it to make you feel small, to weaken your self-esteem, to make you believe you're no longer enough. He might even play with your insecurities. You've been too sensitive lately, you've changed, you're not like you used to be, don't be like that, it was just a joke. And so you start adapting. You start changing to please him. Hiding what bothers you. Trying harder. Shrinking yourself so you won't lose him. And in the process, you lose him even more and lose yourself along the way. Because emotional manipulation isn't about resolution. It's about control. It's about making you adjust to his discomfort, excuse his mistakes, become smaller, so he doesn't have to face his own ego. The most dangerous part is that he often does it with apparent calm. No yelling. No hitting. But the gestures, the silences, the subtle attitudes, they break you from the inside. And the pain is just as real, or even worse, because it is invisible to everyone but you. You know something is wrong because you can't speak without being interrupted. You can't cry without feeling guilty. You can't say, "This hurts me," without hearing, "Stop being dramatic." And if someone asked you what's going on, maybe you wouldn't even know how to explain it, because there's no big scene, no proof, no clear drama. But there is a daily erosion of your self-worth. A slow collapse of your emotional safety. And the question is, how much longer will you let this continue? You weren't born to doubt yourself. You weren't born to beg for validation. You weren't born to silence your intuition every time someone doesn't know how to love you honestly. If a man cannot handle an uncomfortable conversation, he is not ready for a real relationship. If a man needs to manipulate instead of taking responsibility, he is not emotionally mature. If a man turns your clarity into a problem, then he is the problem. Remember this: true love doesn't make you question your worth. True love doesn't silence you. It doesn't shrink you. It doesn't confuse you. If you are in a relationship where what you feel brings more doubt than peace, more anxiety than trust, more fear than love, then it is not love. It is emotional dependency fueled by manipulation. Today is the day to reclaim your voice. To trust your perception again. To honor what you feel, even if no one else understands it, because you do. And that is enough. A conscious woman doesn't need physical proof when her soul has already felt the abandonment. The soul doesn't lie. It only grows tired of being ignored. There comes a point in every painful story when the woman stops waiting. When she no longer looks for explanations. When she no longer needs proof. She simply wakes up. And that awakening hurts. Because it is not just about accepting that he no longer loves you the way he once did. It is about accepting that you abandoned yourself too. That you stayed when he had already left. That you defended a bond where you were the only one still present, but that pain, though deep, is sacred because it marks the beginning of your rebirth. Leaving yourself is not selfishness. It is emotional survival. It is understanding that a relationship where you have to beg for attention, for truth, for respect, is not love. It is dependency. It is fear disguised as hope. And you are not here to live in fear. You are here to learn to look at yourself with the same eyes you once hoped he would see you with. To become the woman who believes she is worthy without needing to be chosen. To reclaim what you gave unconditionally. Your time, your energy, your tenderness. Because it is not your fault that you loved. It is not your fault that you trusted. But it is your responsibility to heal. And to heal, you must let go. Letting go is not hatred. It is not punishment. It is not closing your heart. Letting go is saying, I understand, I no longer need proof, I no longer want to justify the unjustifiable, I choose me. And that woman, that choice, is the most powerful act you can take. Carl Jung said that freedom doesn't come from changing others, but from stopping your reactions to their shadow. And that is exactly what you do when you stop asking someone to value you. You step out of their emotional shadow. You reclaim your light. The intuition you ignored for so long now becomes your compass, the same intuition he tried to silence, the same intuition you once silenced yourself. That intuition that always knew is now your guide. And if you listen, it will lead you back to yourself. You don't need physical proof. You've already seen his absence. You've already lived his disinterest. You've already felt his indifference. That is enough. When the soul senses abandonment, no further evidence is needed. Now it is time to rebuild. To walk alone again without feeling like you are losing something. Because you are not losing, you are reclaiming. You are reclaiming your power, your dignity, your voice. You are done begging for what you deserve: true love, mutual respect, clarity, real presence. And yes, there will be days of nostalgia. Days when you miss the good moments. Days when you want to believe again. But on those days, remind yourself why you left. Remind yourself how you felt. Remind yourself what you silenced in the name of love. Then breathe and move forward. Because a woman who has been betrayed, if she does not break, transforms. She becomes someone who no longer accepts half-hearted love, who no longer justifies absence, who no longer seeks approval, who no longer waits. A woman who sees with her soul, and who no longer fears letting go of someone who already let go of her long ago. And if one day you love again, and you will, it will be from a different place. From a version of yourself that is no longer afraid to say, "This isn't enough." A version that knows peace is worth more than attachment. That self-love should never be sacrificed for someone else's love. So today, don't cry for the one who didn't know how to care for you. Cry for yourself, for what you endured, for what you postponed, for what you deserved and didn't receive. Cry and then wipe your face and carry on, because this story is no longer his. It is yours. And you get to decide how it ends. You are not a victim. You are a woman awake. You are not hard to love. He simply wasn't ready to love with the depth that you love. You are not fragile. You are strong for feeling so much and still refusing to harden. And most of all, you are not alone. There are thousands of women waking up just like you, breaking free from self-deception, breaking invisible chains, learning to listen to themselves, to trust themselves, to rebuild, because surviving is no longer enough. Today is the time to live in truth. And living in truth means letting go of those who no longer resonate with you. It means closing cycles, even when it hurts. It means believing in yourself, even when everything around you tells you to doubt. Trust. Trust your intuition. Trust that quiet inner whisper that says, "No more." Trust your path, even if it is uncertain. Because in the end, every woman who chooses herself finds the most important kind of love, the love that comes from within. And to etch this into your soul, a conscious woman doesn't need to see the betrayal with her eyes when she has already felt it with her soul.